Okay, we're going to get started. This is Editorial Spotlight, the public affairs webcast of the journalnewslohud.com editorial board. I'm Herb Pinder, along with Anjanette Delgado and Nancy Cutler. Also with us is staff reporter Barbara Nachman, who will no doubt be writing on the race, and Brian Tumulty from our Washington bureau is here as well. And in the quarter, you'll also see Janet Hassett, our publisher. This is the interview for candidates vying in the 18th, for the 18th district congressional seat, and joining us are from left to right, the incumbent Nan Hayworth, Republican, and Patrick Maloney, the Democratic challenger. And welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
If you wish to join the conversation by submitting a question or making a comment, you can do so by a number of means, including by sending us a tweet at LoHud Opinion, that's LOHUD Opinion, using the hashtag LoHud Votes. You can also engage the Covered Live feature on your computer screen. We'll be monitoring your submissions, and we've already received some via email, and we'll interrupt as circumstances warrant. Just to get us started, if each of you could take 2 minutes just to tell us who you are, your connections with the district, why, in your case, Congresswoman, why you're seeking re-election, and Mr. Maloney, why you're running for office in the first place. And we'll start with you, Congresswoman.
Sure. Well, I've had the great fortune of having lived in the Hudson Valley for the past 24 years. I have deep roots here. I started my medical practice here in 1989 and grew it from scratch, my own small business as well. My sons were born in 1991 and 1993 in Mount Kisco, and they are both alumni of Fox Lane High School. We've lived, worked, raised family here, and I have a deep love for the Hudson Valley. I've considered it a great privilege to get to know every town and village and small city in our current district and in the new district. And I carry those concerns with me to Washington in the work I do there. And we've had some remarkable successes that have involved working closely with our constituents and also, of course, across the aisle. Including with Governor Cuomo on financing the reconstruction of the Tappan Zee Bridge, including working as a co-chair of the bipartisan Hurricane Irene Coalition to speed relief to our towns and farmland and repair roads and bridges that were devastated by Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee. We've had outstanding constituent service. We've held 2 very well-received job fairs here in the district because we care very much about making sure that what I do makes sense for everyone. And of course, when I'm in Washington, I'm doing all I can to try to revive our economy. We need to make sure that we are not burdening our job creators, our small businesses, our employers, whom we need to relieve the situation, especially acute in Orange County, which has an 8.9% unemployment rate. We have so much wonderful potential here. Let's release that potential by relieving tax burdens, relieving regulatory burdens, and making sure that your energy prices are lower too.
We'll get back
and
to
I
all
thank you
those.
for letting me serve.
We'll get to all those issues, Mr. Maloney.
Well, thank you for your attention, and thank you for being here today. Thank you for having us at the Journal News. The choice in this election is between a Bill Clinton Democrat who's run a business and created jobs and a Tea Party Republican who wants to continue with these broken Tea Party policies that would have a terrible effect on our economy and on the Hudson Valley. What do I mean? Well, I worked for President Clinton for years on the White House senior staff. I also ran a business and created hundreds of good jobs right here in New York. Congresswoman Hayworth went to Washington 2 years ago on this Tea Party wave, and what were her priorities? Well, we know now what the record is, and the record speaks for itself. Her number 1 priority was to end the guaranteed benefit of Medicare and destroy a 50-year promise that we've kept to seniors by replacing it with a capped benefit that will cost seniors $6,000 more every year. Her other priority was to defund Planned Parenthood and cripple that critical organization which provides health care to tens of thousands of Hudson Valley families. You know, Planned Parenthood provides breast cancer screenings and cervical cancer screenings, provides critical prenatal care for families all over the region, and they won't get that care elsewhere if Planned Parenthood's not there. And it's already illegal under federal law for Planned Parenthood to use taxpayer funds for abortion. So this measure was only designed to kill this critically important organization, Planned Parenthood. Those were Tea Party priorities. And there's more. They want to cut veterans benefits in the Ryan budget. Congresswoman voted for that twice, an $11 billion cut. They want to cut Pell Grants that make it harder for kids to go to college. And they want to make it harder for kids to pay back their loans after they get out of college. These are Tea Party priorities. And on things like Hurricane Irene, we all remember the sad day when Congresswoman Hayworth thought it was the right time to try to cut the budget before approving FEMA funding for Hurricane Irene disaster relief. That was a Tea Party priority. So in area after area, whether it's Medicare or women's health or disaster relief, Congresswoman Hayworth has stood with the Tea Party every step of the way. And on Indian Point, well, Congresswoman Hayworth is the #1 recipient of money from the owners of Indian Point in the Republican Party.
Okay,
I think
Mr.
it's time for a change, and if you give me your voice and your vote, we'll go in a different direction.
Okay, we're going to dive into all of those issues, but as a threshold matter, I think an issue has been Congress itself. We've had more gridlock than ever, more brakemanship over, particularly over budget issues, tax issues, debt ceiling, record number of filibusters. If you become a member of Congress, how would you change this dynamic? And speak to your own party's conduct as well in terms of
The own party, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said, and speak to your own party's conduct as well when we talk about the brakemanship and the hyper-partisanship.
Right. Well, we've seen recently a book by Norm Ornstein, who's no liberal, who placed blame squarely on the Tea Party Congress and folks like the Congresswoman for the dysfunction in the House of Representatives. I've heard the Congresswoman say everywhere we've appeared together that the House of Representatives is working just great. Well, if you think the House of Representatives is working just great, then by all means you should support Congresswoman Hayworth. I think it's broken. I think what they're doing is fighting and not working for us. And the fact is, Congresswoman Hayworth took the earliest vacation, along with her colleagues, that any Congress has taken since 1960, the earliest recess. And you're paying for it as taxpayers, because you keep paying their salary whether they're working or not. And what they leave undone? Well, they didn't do the Farm Bill, which our farmers need desperately. They didn't reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act. In area after area, this Congress has failed horribly. This is the worst, most dysfunctional Congress I've ever seen. Now look, I've been working across the aisle my whole career. I ran a business for years, but I've also worked in public service. And in the White House, working side by side with Bill Clinton, we worked with Republicans to get things done. When I was in state government, I helped draft the marriage equality law that was passed with Republican votes because we knew we had to work across the aisle to get things done. So that doesn't mean Democrats will get everything they want. It doesn't mean Republicans should get everything they want. We've got to work in a bipartisan fashion, and that means more than just joining a caucus or sending a letter or saying you do. It means what is your record? And in area after area, I'm sorry to say, Congresswoman Hayworth has stood with the Tea Party and not with Hudson Valley families.
Your thoughts, Congresswoman?
Well, I want to point out something that probably is obvious to our viewers, that Mr. Maloney is going to spend a lot of time talking about me and, frankly, distorting my record. You can tell Sean's doing that when his lips are moving. But he won't tell you just about anything about his specific plans because he doesn't have any specific plans except to attack me. In any case, the House of Representatives has shown over and over again that we have worked across the aisle to pass bills that would provide the kind of relief that we desperately need in a very bad economy that deprives, 23 million plus Americans of full employment or of adequate employment. This is a very serious matter. The obstructionism has actually been on the Senate side. Senator Reid has passed virtually no bills that have come to him except for those that are so-called must-pass bills. This is not the way that the Congress should work. We certainly in the House of Representatives have pass literally dozens of bills to relieve burdens, to make the federal government live within its means the way Hudson Valley families do, to restrain a $1 trillion plus deficit that is accumulating year after year. That's why, of course, we had to raise the debt ceiling last summer, in the summer of 2011, and I was one of the leaders in bringing together the ratings agencies, the folks who actually can determine the consequences of not raising the debt ceiling. I was able to do that for our fellow freshmen in the House of Representatives so that we could reach a rational and balanced conclusion about these things. It's very important that we listen to our constituents. I have been throughout our Hudson Valley. When Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee hit, I was the first member of the New York delegation to ask that the President designate us for full relief, both individual and public relief. And in fact, I was the first office to bring together FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, and New York State DEC to provide long-term solutions for our farmlands in particular, where the drainage has not been adequate because of various problems trying to get that channel cleared. And we were able to make real progress there. And because of work like that, I was actually just named a friend of the farmer by the New York State Farm Bureau. And I'm very glad to have that honor. And you can only do those sorts of things when you're actually on the ground in our communities, listening to all the constituencies and all the people who need you to be an effective leader. If all you can do is throw bombs at the other side, you see a clear example here. If all you can do is throw bombs at the other side, you're never going to be able to work with the kind of respect and cooperative attitude that I've demonstrated over and over again.
Can I respond to that, Herb? I mean, I think that if the Congresswoman's point is that Congress is working great, I just disagree. If her
I
point
said
is
the
that
House is working great, Mr. Maloney, not the
But
Congress.
if I may, I didn't interrupt you, Congresswoman. If you don't mind, I'd
Well,
like to
because
make...
you're saying something that's false.
Well, you can keep interrupting me, but I think the way this is going to work best is if we both respect each other and let each other have a word once in a while.
And please respect the truth.
Well, here's the truth. The truth is that the farmers in Orange County said you let them drown in the mud. The farmers, like Chris Pavelski, like Jeff and Adina Bialis, who I know you criticize, say that when the water came up over their crops, that you were with Eric Cantor, and this is the truth, Congresswoman, you were with Eric Cantor insisting that we should cut the budget before we authorize FEMA funding. Now that's what happened,
Simply
and the
not
Times
true.
Herald. Well,
Sean,
the Times,
you weren't there.
The Times Herald
you
record.
haven't been in the Hudson Valley.
I was
you weren't
there with them a couple of months ago, and
Yes,
that's
you
what
weren't
they
there.
said.
You weren't there when the storms hit.
And if you read if you read your own statements at the time in the Times Herald record,
The Times Herald
not
record
me
did
saying
not
it.
quote me correctly, and they issued a
They did not
correction
quote you
thereafter.
correctly. Well, here's what we know. What we know is that you said
quoted
that there was
someone
an
else.
economic crisis in addition to the hurricane,
Would
and that
you
we
not
needed
agree
to
there's an
address that.
economic crisis, Sean?
I think that when it's your district underwater, it's your job to bring help, and somebody else can worry about cutting the budget, Congresswoman, and that's why the farmers in Orange County said that you let them drown in the mud, and it's worse. You have no plan to dredge the Wallkill River. I've worked with the folks at the Port Authority. I could get that done. You have no plan for a real crop insurance program, and you and your Republican friends left town before passing the Farm Bill. That is deserting the farmers all over again.
Herb, I do need to respond to that, because the passage of the Farm Bill depends not only on the House but on the Senate, and this is something that we have, in fact, I've been one of the people who has called on our leadership on both sides to bring this to a conclusion as rapidly as possible, because it is crucial that we listen to our farmers. The farmers whom you quote, Sean, are, particularly in Mr. Pavelski's case, Mr. Pavelski is an activist for your party.
No, that's not fair.
It is absolutely true, Sean, and I urge anybody who cares about this issue to look at Chris Pavelski's postings on Facebook. They're eye-opening.
There is one point that there is one point.
I have to say that
I know that both of you we've had terrible lessons from watching the presidential debates where people talk over each other. But we're not going to do that today because we have a lot of ground to cover. I have a question from a reader.
Well, this is from Mr. Pavelski, who identifies himself as on the board of the Orange County Farm Bureau, and he is pointing out in his version that Representative Gibson bucked leadership to fight for this aid, along with Senators Schumer and Gillibrand. But last year, after the destroyed crops in the Black Dirt region of Orange County, he is saying that, Congresswoman, you did not buck House leadership and fight for vitally needed crops, instead having the budget vote first.
Not true, and again, I urge all of our viewers to see Mr. Pavelski's postings, because he is clearly not what you would call an objective witness at all. I have worked very closely with our farmers, and I've tried to work with Mr. Pavelski as well. We have an Agriculture Advisory Committee, and he was there at the first meeting and really refused to engage, even though we asked, please, we'll work with you. He likes to work with Senator Gillibrand. We said, we'll be happy to work with Senator Gillibrand. Congressman Gibson's a great guy, and he is on the Agriculture Committee. So some things certainly have originated with him. I have supported all of those efforts. I voted for every FEMA allocation in our budgets. I voted for every FEMA funding bill all along. And I always said from the start that the emergency aid is the priority, not cutting funds and then providing the aid. Provide the emergency aid. That comes first. And there are plenty of opportunities for us to have a responsible budget, which in fact the House of Representatives has passed. We have passed a budget in 2011 and 2012. Why? Because we owe that to the American people. People who are looking for opportunity and looking for jobs are struggling against an economy that is laboring under the burden of $16 trillion of national debt. But that is not the purpose of our work after Hurricane Irene was to provide relief. I was on the ground the night of the storms, and Mr. Maloney, I realized you would not know that because you were not here, but I was here. I was on the ground the night of the storms visiting our emergency centers. I was on the ground the next day viewing damage, and every day thereafter for 4 weeks we were concentrating on providing that relief and that help, which is why I convened a meeting in October in Warwick to bring together FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the New York State DEC, because trying to provide the sort of short-term reconstruction and long-term help, and these are the facts, and they're well documented, and there are certainly.
So it's a mischaracterization that you at first were backing the call by Representative Cantor. No funding for FEMA unless offsets are found?
Absolutely. And in fact, after Chris McKenna and I were the ones who had that conversation, initially in the Times-Herald Record, I read the account and took exception to it immediately. And Chris and I certainly had some words thereafter to correct.
Wow.
Sean, you've never been misquoted in the press? Well, gosh,
wow.
I sure have.
Well, there's
so.
two different reporters who had the same quote, Congresswoman, and they
well,
checked with each
you
other
can look
because
at the
they thought
record
it
and
was
look
so
at my
example.
votes.
Listen, if that, I mean, that's quite a statement the Congresswoman just made. The fact of the matter is you can run down Chris Pavelski all you want, but what about Jeff and Adina Bialis? Are they activists too? I mean, Chris Pavelski is not a Democrat or a Republican. He has not endorsed me.
All right,
if I may, Herb, the Congresswoman just had about 4 uninterrupted minutes, so I won't talk over her, but I'm also not going to sit idly by when she misrepresents what happened.
You haven't been idle at all.
But,
yeah, I'll give you about a minute.
well, I think that's fair. So here's what Chris Pavelski's done. He loves Chris Gibson. He's a Republican. He supports Annie Rabbit. She's a Republican. He'll say wonderful things about other Republican elected officials. He's not a Democratic activist. He's not a Democrat at all, from what I can tell, and he sure hasn't endorsed me.
Okay, we're going to move on because there are other issues, and I mentioned that we have a lot of ground to cover. Both of you are aware of the fiscal cliff. The Congressional Budget Office has said that without congressional action to avoid this fiscal cliff, that's like expiration of the Bush tax cuts and the beginning of the first installment of some significant budget cuts, we could have another recession, a significant recession, lose 2 million jobs.
Yeah.
What does Congress need to do to avoid that, and where are you prepared to compromise? And the question's for both of you, sure. To see that we avoid this calamity. And we'll start with you, Congresswoman.
You bet. Well, Herb, I actually worked with our Democratic fellow members of the House and with the Democratic leadership of the Senate directly on an important committee, a conference committee at the beginning of 2012, end of 2011 into 2012, to assure that the payroll tax holiday could be sustained for another year, and that Medicare reimbursements for our seniors, to assure that they can receive the care that they need, that those Medicare reimbursements would be sustained throughout this year, and also that federal unemployment benefits could be sustained. So I know what it's like to work cooperatively across a table in a respectful and productive, constructive way to get good things done for our people. And this is really the approach that we are going to have to take when we look at our short-term and our long-term measures to address the fiscal cliff. Now, before the summer was over, we passed in the House of Representatives, midsummer, we did pass a measure to assure that the 2001 and 2003 structures would be, the tax code would be maintained for at least another year, and to put into place the long-term reform of the tax code that we really need, so that we can have a flatter, fairer tax code that will bring business back to the United States and make it easier, especially for our small businesses who labor under some of the highest taxes in the world, to be able to grow and to thrive. So we passed that measure through the House. Of course, the Senate did not. These measures in the House passed with votes from Democrats as well. This is an urgent matter that we are going to need to address, Herb, and the sooner the better. When the results of the election are known, we will obviously have a firm idea of the landscape that is ahead of us. But whatever that may be, if we have essentially the same landscape we do now, with a Republican majority in the House, Democratic majority in the Senate, President Obama in the White House, then I will continue to work, as I have done throughout, with my fellow members, including co-sponsoring bills together, so that we can do our best for the American people. It's not about party. It's about the people we serve.
Mr. Milley.
Well, I don't know what any of that really boils down to. That was a long answer. I think what it boils down to is that the Congresswoman wants to extend all of the Bush-era tax cuts, even for the very wealthiest, and the Congresswoman wants new tax cuts under the Ryan budget, which she voted for twice, which would blow a $15 trillion hole in the budget over the next 10 years. And at the same time, the Congresswoman wants to end the guaranteed benefit of Medicare, costing seniors $6,000 more a year. She wants to block grade Medicaid to the states, which would be terrible for New York, and she wants to defund Planned Parenthood, crippling that important organization. I would take a different approach. I would let the Bush tax cuts expire for the very wealthiest. Number one, that's very important. Number two, I would extend the payroll tax cut for an additional year. I think middle-class families are using that money to buy groceries and to put gas in their car. The Congresswoman voted against the payroll tax cut 6 times this year. And I want to correct the record on one thing about the Farm Bill that the Congresswoman said a moment ago. You know, the Farm Bill is very important for our farmers in Orange County. And the fact of the matter is the Farm Bill was passed by a big bipartisan majority in the Senate. And the reason it died was because the Tea Party and Congresswoman Hayworth wanted to cut food stamps more. And then they left town without finishing the job. This is the kind of misplaced Tea Party priority that I think is creating the fiscal cliff in the first place. Look, I worked with Bill Clinton. We balanced the budget. These guys talk about it. We did it. We balanced the budget and ran record surpluses. And if we had left Bill Clinton's policies in place, the national debt today would be zero. I was with President Clinton just last night, and one of the things he said was that if we had just paid as we went for these huge tax cuts by cutting spending or the prescription drug benefit by paying for it, the national debt today would be zero, and we would be a debt-free country. Instead, the Tea Party has led us to this cliff in the first place.
I'll give you an opportunity to respond, Congressman. But in this area, I also have 2 questions from readers. One is from Barbara Berthenthal from Ardsley, and she writes, well, this is about the Grover Norquist pledge that a number of lawmakers signed, the pledge not to
I signed it
raise
too.
taxes.
I
And
signed
she
it too.
writes, when you are elected by your constituents, they want you to do what is best for them and the country.
Right.
They do not expect you to relinquish your rights to Grover Norquist, who threatens to run another candidate against you if you don't do what he says. Again, I ask, are you going to remove your name from Grover Norquist's list?
I was, when I ran in 2010, and of course that was 2 years ago, but some principles obviously are, well, principles are always evergreen. Certainly our circumstances can change, but I ran because I ran having signed that pledge, and certainly talking about it because, and I talked all the time about the fact that new taxes are not the answer here. New taxes and new burdens on the American public are not the answer to our economic problems. And this is a matter of allegiance to the people of my district, not to any ideology, not to the Tea Party. That's a favorite theme of Mr. Maloney's because he is limited in his arguments. But the fact of the matter is that this is the folks in our district are members of the Wake Up and Smell the Coffee Party, and this goes across all the lines. This is what I hear over and over again among our constituents whom I talk with in every corner of our district. They want to see that we can work cooperatively to get things done and grow our economy and make sure that people are going back to work. And President Obama himself said it, and I voted about there was a survey done early this year in the spring, and it turns out I have voted about 33% of the time with President Obama, and still held to my pledge to our constituents that I won't raise their taxes. But President Obama himself said it in December of 2010, and it is still true. This is not the time to be raising taxes. That's not the solution to our problems. The solution to our problems is to relieve the burdens that we currently place on our businesses and on our employers, especially our small businesses, and those include our family farms, of whom I am proud to be their friend. And the Farm Bureau clearly has made that their position. But we need to relieve those tax burdens. We need to relieve regulatory burdens. We have worked on that in the House of Representatives, Democrats and Republicans alike, to try to lift some of the red tape that was imposed, especially during the 2 years before we came into office, and to lower energy prices.
Okay, we're going to move forward. A comment on the Norquist?
Well,
part?
yes. I mean, this is one of the things that's killing our politics. The Congresswoman is trying to run away from the Tea Party record. But in July of 2011, Congresswoman, well after the election, you described yourself to Human Events magazine as, quote, a Tea Party candidate, and you boasted
Human
about,
Events magazine described me that way, Sean.
I haven't interrupted you, Congresswoman, if you don't mind.
But I'm not lying. You
Well,
are.
I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
No problem.
Yeah, if I may, Herb, you were quoted in Politico just last week, quoting Human Events magazine, saying you were, quote, a Tea Party candidate in July of 2011. Maybe that was another misquote, I guess, huh? Maybe Chris McKenna and Human
No,
Events.
it's a label,
Again,
Sean.
if
I'll
I
be
could-
happy to address it in a
Again, if I
moment.
could finish, you also bragged about being part of a Tea Party organization right here in Westchester. And during the 2010 campaign, you were at a rally with the extremist Sons of Liberty group, ridiculing President Obama as King Barack and everything else. We don't forget that easily, Congresswoman, what the record is, and the facts speak for themselves. Now, Grover Norquist was the question. Folks, Grover Norquist is one of the most extreme conservatives in Washington. He is right now spending $750,000 helping Congresswoman Hayworth get elected. So when you wonder why she made a pledge to him and not to you, that's the reason. He's an anti-tax extremist. He's got half the Tea Party in his pocket, and unfortunately, Congresswoman Hayworth is happy to accept $750,000. That's all those negative commercials you see on TV right now. That's who's paying for it, and that's why she won't ask the wealthy to pay their fair share. If you give me a chance in Congress, we're going to change that.
Well, Sean, you really you disrespect the intelligence of the constituents in the Hudson Valley when you insist on just relying on labels and invective. I never slotted myself as a Tea Party candidate. I am here to serve all of the constituents of the Hudson Valley. Many press accounts, to be sure, after that 2010 election, labeled a lot of us as Tea Party, and certainly I had that support, and it was not the result of my being subject to any particular dogma, because I was always the most centrist among the candidates running in our primary that year. I had positions on the environment and social issues that were distinctly different than members of our Tea Party groups, but they accepted and embraced the fact that I support responsible, responsive government that respects the citizen, and that's all I'm trying to do. So I am Nan, here to serve every member of our district, here to serve every constituent. No Tea Party adherent could end up in the middle of the pack in the House of Representatives, Sean, as I have, based on my record. I have always been someone who has sought to bring all sides together.
I have another question from a reader, and it's from Sarah, and I cannot make out the last name. But in any case, it reads as follows. Pardon me. As a healthcare worker, I've seen drastic cuts to Medicaid and Medicare in needy communities. Its impact on our area has been great. Hospital nursing home facilities are left understaffed or closed. This causes great disparities in the quality of healthcare we provide to our patients. Why have you voted twice for the Paul Ryan budget, which would have caused more closures and lower standards of care?
When I was on the conference committee in the winter 2011 to 2012, I was an advocate for our hospitals and worked very closely with our hospitals to assure that they were not disproportionately affected by certain types of budget measures that actually had been proposed by the administration, as well as by some folks in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. So I was an advocate for a balanced, rational approach that would serve the needs of our state and our community, especially our community here in the Hudson Valley. And I take those responsibilities very seriously. We have to care for our safety net. We have a commitment. We have an obligation. The budgets that we pass in the House of Representatives honor those obligations. And in fact, the actual balance of the budget, of the federal budget, given the obligations we have to sustain Medicare for a large baby boom generation and Social Security the same, we want to save and preserve those things, which is why it takes until 2037 actually to completely balance the budget under our plan. But the key is to grow the economy. The key to sustaining our safety net is to put more Americans back to work. We have the potential to put millions of Americans back to work. What Mr. Maloney espouses is he would be a rubber stamp for a program, including the massive 2010 health law, which had very good goals but was absolutely the wrong law, and I'm happy to talk more about that in detail. But he has espoused positions that will harm our economy. Look at Indian Point. Indian Point is an important source of local power, 18 to 30+% of our base load. It emits only steam into the air. It actually is a very clean source of power. If you want to close Indian Point, as Mr. Maloney has suggested, what we can know for sure is that the energy price for every constituent in the Hudson Valley will rise.
Congressman, I'm going to give you an opportunity to return to
energy
energy issue, because we have a separate question on that. But did you want to comment on the Paul Ryan budget?
I think the question was on why you're going to end the guaranteed benefit of Medicare, why you're going to block grant Medicaid and send it back to the states. That's the Ryan budget, Congresswoman. Now, maybe someone misquoted that too, but here's what the budget does. Here's what the budget does. The budget ends the guaranteed benefit of Medicare. Surely you know that. You voted for it twice.
That's not true, and I will explain.
Well, it absolutely does.
No, it doesn't,
Again,
Sean.
if we're going to interrupt each other, it's not going to work so
well. If you're going to lie, this isn't going to work either.
Oh, that is not a lie. It is absolutely the truth.
Even if it's said charmingly, it's a lie.
Congresswoman, the Ryan budget ends the guaranteed benefit of Medicare. It replaces it with a program. You're right. That's it. There's a new program, and the program is that you go out to private insurers with a capped benefit, and all the risks of future health care increases go to you. Her plan also in the Ryan budget would cripple Planned Parenthood. She hasn't denied that. The fact of the matter is the Ryan budget, which you voted for twice, would cripple Planned Parenthood, even though it's already illegal under federal law to use any taxpayer funds for abortion. This is a mean-spirited Tea Party priority to hurt the women of the Hudson Valley by destroying Planned Parenthood. And with respect to the Medicaid program in particular, I mentioned I was with President Clinton last night. You know, he said, Congresswoman, how any member of the New York delegation who knows anything about the New York Medicaid program could vote to block grant Medicaid and send it back to the states is beyond him, and here's why. I worked in the governor's office, folks. We have a very, very good Medicaid program here in New York, and a lot of the things the state pays for, we get a match from the federal government. Under the Congresswoman's plan, that would be capped and returned to the states, meaning you and the taxpayers of the Hudson Valley would have to pay for all of the services in Medicaid that are now covered by the federal government. That's what your viewer is asking about. And here's what's going to happen. It would destroy the budget of New York. It would destroy Governor Cuomo's efforts to keep your property taxes down, to keep the state moving forward. How any member of the New York delegation could vote to block grant Medicaid and send it back to the states is beyond me.
Congresswoman?
First of all, what we have proposed for the future of Medicare, number one, nothing that would affect current seniors, nothing that would change Medicare's guaranteed benefit for anyone at any point along the line. And in fact, Senator Wyden, who is a Democrat, Ron Wyden of Oregon, and Chairman Ryan of the Budget Committee have worked together to craft a plan for Medicare that as an option for people who are, once it became law, which it certainly has not yet, because the Senate refuses to pass a budget, hasn't done so in more than 3 years. But it would provide opportunity for us to make Medicare work better for seniors by combining their purchasing power with a guaranteed benefit called premium support. It's not a voucher. Premium support assures that everyone will have a plan, they will have the plan that they need. But we will combine millions of seniors by region to negotiate the best plan options for them, very similar to Medicare Part D, which is extremely popular. And Medicare Part D is one part of Medicare that's actually worked really well. Mr. Maloney's plan for Medicare is to let it go bankrupt. My plan for Medicare is to make sure that we secure its future by putting $716 billion taken out by the Affordable Care Act, which Mr. Maloney supports, put those monies back into Medicare. That is a very important priority. Make sure that we have a secure plan for the future of Medicare that is not the Affordable Care Act, again, provides for the future of Medicare by setting budget targets and having reimbursements cut. That's what the Independent Payment Advisory Board does. So our seniors are well aware that could be a terrible problem for them. If reimbursements are cut, that cuts access. It's an indirect way, but it's a very real way. And that is another thing that Mr. Maloney supports in the law that he supports. And we need to get Americans back to work so that they can contribute to Medicare themselves. And this is a rational, sensible plan. And by the way, I have also advocated for Governor Cuomo's plan for the state of New York to make our Medicaid plan work for the state of New York and keep those savings in the state of New York so that they can go to work for our citizens here.
Herb, if I can have a second response to the way the Congresswoman did on that
Actually,
question.
she needs to still respond to something that you asked, but that was also raised by a reader.
You bet.
Well,
Planned Parenthood.
We have a couple of emails that came in. The first, actually, they're both connected to Planned Parenthood. The first is from Mary Ann Williams asking you to explain where you stand on funding for Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
And the second from Planned Parenthood itself, Samantha Leifson, saying that Mitt Romney says if he is elected, he would get rid of Planned Parenthood. And specifically asking Congresswoman Hayworth, you have voted to end funding for Planned Parenthood and also to end funding for the Title X Family Planning Program. So if we defund Planned Parenthood, what's the plan for people who receive health care there? And why end Title X family planning?
Well, Herb, if I can respond to something.
I want to hear.
Well, she's had two responses on the same question. Herb. If you give her a
Let's just be
third,
grown
it's
up for
not
5
fair.
minutes and let's get on with this,
Is
okay?
that right? I mean, honestly.
Thank you.
Congresswoman?
I'll be brief. I sat down with Planned Parenthood and talked with them about the problem that my constituents described to me, and I ran in 2010 pledging that I would oppose taxpayer funding of elective abortion. I will not overturn Roe v. Wade. I believe that women have to have the autonomy over their reproductive rights. There's no question about it. But with the notable exceptions of rape or incest or life of the mother, I've opposed taxpayer funding of abortion. I asked folks at Planned Parenthood to prove to us that that they could separate out their provision of those services, those elective services, from their federal support revenue stream, which is not their only revenue stream. They also receive other contributions, and of course they do receive payments for their services as well. I am not intending in any way to close Planned Parenthood, but I am honoring a commitment that I made to the taxpayers I serve, and that is a matter of conscience. It's a matter of their conscience, and it's a matter of a commitment. It is not an action against Planned Parenthood, but it is honoring a commitment. I would like to see all of those women's services thrive, and in fact I've been an advocate and supporter of our community health centers, which I've visited more than once throughout our district. And I work closely with them to make sure that they have a champion, and they provide very important care. They provide care to families and to women. They provide preventive services and active health care, and I have certainly supported them. And again, my only request of Planned Parenthood was that they could show our taxpayers that they can respect that issue of conscience.
We want to hear from Mr. Melania.
Well, what that means is that the Congresswoman will defund Planned Parenthood. It is illegal under current federal law for Planned Parenthood to use taxpayer money for abortion. It's illegal. Has been for years. That is a well-worn compromise that was good enough for everybody until the Tea Party came along and said, no, they're gonna take away the funding anyway. And too bad if thousands of women in the Hudson Valley depend on Planned Parenthood for breast cancer screenings and for cervical cancer screenings. And how, as a physician, Congresswoman, you could support this kind of extreme attack on a critical provider of health services for women, and particularly middle-class women and their families in the Hudson Valley, is frankly beyond me. But I want to correct the record. In addition, the Congresswoman would replace Medicare with a capped benefit that would leave you at the mercy of private insurers. So under her view of the world, and in terms of the Affordable Care Act, Congresswoman, I need to correct something you said, which is flat wrong, which is that I support the whole law. I don't. I support parts of it, and I think other parts are wrong and should be fixed, including the Independent Payment Advisory Board and some of the things you've objected to. But the difference between you and me is that you voted 31 times to repeal it. CBS News said that cost $50 million. And I think we ought to fix what's not right and move forward. But this Planned Parenthood issue is very important, and I hope people pay close attention. It is an extreme Tea Party priority to destroy Planned Parenthood by taking away all its federal funding when we already make illegal under federal law the use of taxpayer funds for things that would be morally offensive to some taxpayers.
We've heard both of you on that.
Yes.
And I want to switch gears and get back to jobs. I know it's obviously a big issue in this election. Drill down on the jobs picture a bit. During this post-recession era, we've seen high-income jobs bounce back. We lost about 20% of the jobs lost during the recession were high-paying, and they've come back almost at the same levels. Low-wage jobs, we lost about 21% of the jobs were low-wage, but they've bounced back 58%. It's in the middle where we're really stuck. What do we do to bring back mid-income jobs? Obviously, these are jobs that the middle class have depended upon for years, and added another element to this too. One of the concerns is that we lack the skills for these jobs, the educational attainment for these jobs. What do we need to do to make us more competitive in the world economy for that kind of employment?
Right.
We'll start with you, Mr. Milley.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think one of the things that's very important in terms of job creation is to listen to the job creators. There's a man named Jim Taylor who's trying to create 300 jobs tomorrow. in Montgomery. He's got a waste-to-energy facility to create renewable power, which would help us move away from dangerous sources like Indian Point, allow us to avoid fracking, as my opponent wants to do, and generate renewable power and get those jobs here. He needs a federal loan guarantee. The Congresswoman opposes it. And he told the Times-Herald Record, quote, "She's killing us. She's killing small business." Well, that's one thing. I have another idea. I think we should work with the Port Authority to create a massive food distribution hub on the hub at the lands of the Stewart Airport. They were controlled by the Port Authority, so that our local farmers could go to a closer destination and distribute products for the whole region, including New York City. In addition, we could have a food incubation site there, building off our advantages here in the Hudson Valley in the food and beverage industries. We could do it in partnership with the Culinary Institute of America, and we could radiate out from that center in a place that really needs jobs all sorts of economic opportunity. When I was in state government, I created the Public-Private Partnership Commission so that we could leverage private dollars in investments alongside public dollars, the public and private sector working together, because that's what I've done during my career. I created jobs in the Clinton administration, and I also founded my own business and created jobs in the private sector. And you need the public and the private sector working together. And if we had a food and beverage incubation center, if we had a food distribution hub, if we had renewable power being generated right there, right next to each other outside Newburgh, then you would see the transformation of Newburgh, and you would have good middle class jobs with good benefits that you can support a family on, emanating out from that center of opportunity. That's the kind of thing I'm going to work on. And in terms of education, well, when I was in the governor's office, I wanted to create an endowment for the SUNY CUNY system so that kids going to the public higher education schools could have the same benefit that folks who go to the big private schools have, meaning a dedicated source of revenue so they could fully fund capital plans, so they could hire new faculty, so we could keep tuition low. Because the SUNY CUNY system is one of the best engines of economic opportunity we have. I was at Orange County Community College just this week, and the kids there have a new facility because of the funding we put in place when I was in the governor's office. We've got to keep that going. But if you're a Tea Party extremist and you think the government has no role to play, then none of those things are possible.
Okay, Congresswoman?
Sean, you're nothing if not consistent. We've talked about this before, so I'm sorry to bore folks who have seen this in other joint encounters we've had. The problem that Taylor Biomass has is not Nan Hayworth. The problem that Taylor Biomass has is the Department of Energy. We actually helped Mr. Taylor, even though because Taylor Biomass, his proposal is in Orange County, and I know Jim, and I want to be of service to Orange County. And when I wish his project success. And when they had they needed an extension on an application and asked if we could help be a voice to let them get the extension, I was happy to help with that. And in fact, he thanked me for that. But the fact that he doesn't have the Department of Energy loan guarantee has to do with what the Department of Energy loan program has done. It has nothing to do with me. Certainly, Mr. Taylor does have, some friendships that in the political world that may lead him to want to say some unpleasant things about me in the press. But I can tell you that in Orange County, I have many, many friends within the community of people who would like to see the climate for our economy get better, and that's really what we need to happen. We need our members of Congress to work on the climate in the United States, on the kind of laws like the Affordable Care Act, which you campaigned on in your primary, Sean, your support of the Affordable Care Act. The 2010 health law, it's a massive law. It is true, it's a matter of public record. That's a massive, well-intended law, which unfortunately has had very negative consequences. It's made life very hard for our small businesses throughout the Hudson Valley. I'm on the Financial Services Committee in the House, so has the Dodd-Frank Act. That's actually made consumer credit much harder to come by. I had a small businessman in Warwick tell me that he could no longer get a loan from his local local bank, even though they know him well and would like to do it, because the regulators are clamping down. I spoke with a lovely lady who's running a cafe, the same town of Warwick as it happens, and I asked her, as I do all our small businesses, what can I do to help you? How's business and what can I do to help you? And they all say, we're working hard, we're holding as best we can, but we could do a lot better. What can I do for you? Lift the burdens, lower our taxes. They know what's coming January 2013, and it's holding them back. There's a raft of new taxes coming down the pike related to the 2010 health law, related, of course, to the expiration of the 2001 and 2003 tax breaks. And when those expire, they're going to affect everybody. It's a real problem. And new taxes coming as a result of the 2010 health law are going to affect seniors and savers, people who rely on dividends, people who sell their homes are going to have a new real estate tax. It's a big problem. We need to solve it, and that's what I work to do.
The other part of the question was about our lack of educational attainment, lack of skills,
Sure.
and it's a trend that's been going on for 30 years. I mean,
Yes, absolutely. Herb, I just sat down about a month ago in the city of Poughkeepsie with Mayor Tyzik and with 5 pastors from our communities there in Poughkeepsie, just to hear their concerns. And they were very gracious about talking with me for some time. And over again, the issues revolved around educating the kids, K through 12, in communities across the Hudson Valley. But certainly I heard it in some detail in Poughkeepsie. People are asking, I haven't heard any teachers praise any of the federal programs, No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, really haven't heard any praise for any of them. There have been a lot of new burdens imposed, but there hasn't been any help or any good results that they've seen come from these things. So we need to leave resources in our communities. We need to have the federal government respect our communities, allow communities like those in the city of Poughkeepsie to set up charter schools, to provide incentives for teachers who excel, reward the kind of great response and great results that communities need and deserve for their kids. And if we could start with that fundamental respect for parents and for our communities and allow those resources to be used creatively in our communities instead of being accompanied by a raft of federal regulations. That's been a theme in the past couple of administrations, obviously, in the past couple of years before the 2010 congressional election. We could do far better, and we need to.
Well, on just to correct the record on Taylor Biomass, I mean, Jim Taylor, the guy running it, is a Republican. Every Republican local elected official in that part of the Hudson Valley, from the state assemblywoman to the state senator to the county executive, all Republicans support that project. And Jim Taylor told the Times-Herald Record, quote, "Nan Hayworth is killing us. She is killing small business." Now, maybe he was misquoted too, Congresswoman, but the fact of the matter is, he said you are the problem, that you are opposing his federal loan guarantee, and he's got $45 million of his own money in the game, folks. He's a job creator. And the policies of this extreme Tea Party Congress and of Congresswoman Hayworth are holding us back from those kind of opportunities. I want those jobs here in the Hudson Valley. That's the kind of thing we need to be doing. And if I can make a point about Indian Point, if we responsibly close Indian Point over a 5 to 7 year period, every other nuclear station around the country that has been closed, they saw an increase in jobs during that process, which means that we can improve the economies of Peekskill and Buchanan and the surrounding communities. We can transition the workers, and we can transition to clean, renewable sources of power and eliminate the risk of Indian Point, which I'm not comfortable with. The Congresswoman dismisses it with a wave of a hand, and maybe the fact that she's the largest recipient of money from the people who own Indian Point in the Republican Party. Entergy gives you more money, Congresswoman, than anyone in the Republican Party. Maybe that's part of the reason you're willing to look the other way. I'm not. I think we need to take this risk seriously. We would never put that nuclear power station in this part of the world today. And we can do it without raising energy prices. We know we can. But we've got to get serious about projects like Taylor Biomass that'll give us renewable power and create jobs right here.
Sean,
Not just energy, not just Indian Point, but Indian Point,
Right.
fracking, and
Sure.
and
Happy
also,
to discuss.
and also if you talk about climate change too.
absolutely. But I just want to identify a theme with Mr. Maloney, which as the federal government should, aside from the fact that he harps on certain things regardless of the evidence, the federal government should be picking, winners and losers in the marketplace. Unfortunately, the Department of Energy Loan Program, which again, I have not in any way stood in the way of Taylor Biomass's dealings with that program. In fact, I tried to help them. And if Senator Schumer and every Republican official could somehow have gotten the job done, don't you think it would have been done, Sean? You have to ask that question too, not that you will. But you can't have the federal government trying to pick winners and losers in the marketplace. That's how we just A123 battery just closed. 250 plus million taxpayer dollars, desperately needed dollars that should have gone into the economy here, that should have gone into infrastructure. The president has authorized $90 billion worth of so-called green energy spending, most of which, unfortunately, has either gone to other countries or has been lost. Solyndra, A123 battery, Fisker, you can name them. They have unfortunately gone by the wayside because if they make sense to invest in, they'll find the funding in the marketplace. They'll find investment. So you always have to ask a question when the federal government has to invest, quote unquote, in commercial projects. The federal government should be investing in infrastructure, in the Tappan Zee Bridge, in our roads and bridges, because that's actual work that government should do. But instead, we're going to have the kind of theme where the federal government is picking and choosing winners and losers in the marketplace, mostly losers, and this is going to be a perpetual problem. So we can't afford that. We should have a full energy portfolio. We should move. I take the potential for global warming, for human contribution to that very seriously. And we should be minimizing our carbon footprints, and I've said that all along. We have to have a balanced, sustainable approach. It has to be economically sustainable, fiscally sustainable, and environmentally sustainable. We should be using lower carbon sources of energy. And Indian Point is a zero carbon source of energy for the Hudson Valley. The risk has to be taken seriously. It has to be operated safely, as I've said many times, and Sean, if you had listened, you would know that.
Well,
but you cannot, it's a vanishingly small risk that we would have to evacuate based on a mishap at Indian Point. And to try to impose higher energy prices on the already hard-pressed folks in this district is really unconscionable.
Well, that's just a canard. The fact of the matter is Congresswoman, you've called the risk of Indian Point vanishingly small, and I'm sure that's what the owners of Fukushima said about the risks there. The fact of the matter is,
Different countries, Sean.
Again, I'm not going to interrupt you, Congresswoman, but I'd love a chance to get a word in. The fact of the matter is you voted in the Ryan budget to cut by $1 billion emergency response training for radioactive disasters. That's one more part of the Ryan budget. And as for the government investing in winners and losers, you're more than happy to give huge tax breaks to oil companies. You keep voting for those, and those are the most profitable companies on the planet. And maybe it's because Congresswoman Hayworth has received hundreds of thousands of dollars from the fossil fuel industry. She supports fracking right here in the Hudson Valley. She'd do it on military lands like at West Point. She's for fracking in parkland, like maybe the bird sanctuary in the Wallkill River. There's not a place she doesn't want to frack, and she says she wants to do it under the law. But here's the thing, I don't want to do it in the Hudson Valley, and I want to invest in renewable sources of power and get the jobs here. The fact of the matter is, in area after area, Congresswoman Hayworth is voting for these extreme policies, and Jim Taylor can speak for himself. He's a Republican. He says you're costing us 300 jobs right now, good jobs, right up the road, in a place that we desperately need them. So when you talk about winners and losers, as long as you're in Congress, Congresswoman, the Hudson Valley is going to be the loser, and these projects will be going somewhere else. I think that's nuts. I think you need a representative to fight for you, to go down to Washington and be your voice and share your values, and who's not going to side every time with the Tea Party on this extreme agenda. And you told the Bedford Patch in July last year, About the same time, you were bragging of being a Tea Party candidate to human events and bragging about being in a Westchester Tea Party organization. You told the Bedford Patch you weren't sure about the science of climate warming. Maybe you were misquoted there too, but that's in black
Okay,
and white.
let's hear from the Congressman.
Sure. What I've said is that I expect the evidence to be handled in a way that we can actually rely on it. And there have been
Is climate change caused
distortions.
by human activity or not?
There have been distortions of the evidence on both sides of that argument. There
It's
have
really a
been
yes or no, Congresswoman.
no,
Do
it's
you
actually
believe-
not, Sean. I'm a scientist. I actually do have a science
then you should
background.
be
I'm a
able to
doctor.
answer whether human beings
What I've
are
said is this
warming the climate or
consistently.
not.
What
All right,
I've
so
said is
we're
this-
going to move on.
What I've said is this
What is your
consistently,
belief?
that we should endeavor to reduce our carbon footprints now. Whatever the evidence is, I am willing to respect that possibility and act on it in ways that make economic sense. Sean, your proposal, you really haven't even named any specifics. You wave your hand about renewables. We have real people suffering in the Hudson Valley with
Okay,
$4 a gallon
I'll
gas.
give you some specifics. You want some specifics?
Our readers
Let me do
would
that.
actually like to get a
Happy to
word
give
in
you specifics.
edgewise.
We have several questions actually on the Defense of Marriage Act,
Great.
including one from Corey from Poughkeepsie, who is following along in our live chat today. And they all essentially ask you both to explain your stance on the Defense of Marriage Act. If you could start, Mr. Maloney.
Yes, this is very important. Congresswoman Hayworth and the Tea Party Congress are right now in court fighting to preserve this discriminatory law and using taxpayer dollars to do it. The House of Representatives, the Tea Party Congress, including you, Congresswoman Hayworth, are using taxpayer dollars right now, people need to know this, to defend the constitutionality of this discriminatory law, which makes it impossible for the states ever to provide equality of marriage rights to their citizens. The Congresswoman is fond of saying that she wants to leave it up to the states. But if you listen closely, she will not tell you her position on DOMA. She'll say the Supreme Court's going to decide it. She won't tell you that she's using your taxpayer dollars to defend it in court. That's wrong. It is a discriminatory law. It was passed when I was in Washington and signed by Bill Clinton. And you know what? He says it's wrong. He says we made a mistake.
Okay.
He says he wished he hadn't done it. I would love to hear the Congresswoman simply say we should repeal the Defense of Marriage Act.
Your position, Congressman?
There was just an announcement today in the news that the Federal Appeals Court in New York has declared DOMA unconstitutional, and I certainly anticipate that this is yet another step toward DOMA's going to the Supreme Court. I've always said that we have to respect the states' constitutional rights to certain aspects of legislation, and one of them is providing a definition of marriage. So the federal government can't impose a definition of marriage on the states. New York State has certainly made its choice, and I respect that. And I've also, I'm a co-sponsor of legislation to provide equality of domestic partner benefits. I'm a co-sponsor of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, so that employees cannot be discriminated against on the basis of their gender orientation. These are important issues, and we do want to make sure that we have a fair and equitable society, and that people have the opportunity to live their lives as they choose.
Congresswoman,
And we
right
have
now-
to
Mr.
respect
Malloy, please.
we have to respect the constitutional process in this, as in all things. We had an important decision on the Affordable Care Act by the Supreme Court this summer, and I respect that as well.
Congresswoman, this is an
I have a
important
question.
issue.
Do
This is
you
a
mind
very
I have a
important
question? My question is, how does that respect the rights of New Yorkers if Utah won't respect, doesn't this shortchange New York families?
Well, there are lots of questions that are being asked about DOMA, which is why it's probably on its way to the Supreme Court. I mean, clearly the New York State Court of Appeals has declared it unconstitutional. That means it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And I anticipate that it's going to be a decision that will be made relatively soon.
Congresswoman, right now, the law that you support makes my family less equal than yours. And it means that my tax dollars apparently
Sean,
don't mean
I
as
just
much as yours.
said-
Let me
Sean, I
finish,
just
please.
said
Let
that
me
this is
finish,
a
please.
constitutional issue.
You will not take a position on this. What is your view, Congresswoman? Is it right or wrong? What is your view? This is an important issue. Don't your constituents deserve to know
Well, let's let her
what you think?
answer.
Right now, Sean, DOMA is federal law. Right now,
and you write those laws,
DOMA
Congresswoman.
I did not write DOMA.
Well, you
Sean.
write them in Congress.
I neither
Do you support
wrote
its
nor
repeal?
voted on it. I neither wrote nor voted on DOMA. But DOMA, nor did I write nor vote on the
Okay,
2010
we
health law.
have- we have our an- we have
But
our
DOMA
answer.
is
I
in
don't
the
think that is
process
an
of
answer.
constitutional
All due
evaluation. Of
respect.
course it is, and I respect the Constitution, and I also clearly respect civil rights, or I would not have co-sponsored domestic partnership
Should we do
benefits
it? The
equality.
Supreme Court
or
declared
the
the-
Employment Non-Discrimination Act.
The Congress has the primary role to play, and DOMA makes it illegal for the states to ever give
Okay, let's ask it
same-sex
now.
couples equality. You know that, surely.
I
You
did not
absolutely
write
know
nor
that.
pass DOMA,
What-
Sean, and it
We're
is
gonna move-
in
but
the
you
won't take
process
a
of
position on it,
constitutional
which I think means
evaluation.
that you support its continuation, and you're using taxpayer dollars.
I'm not
to
using
defend it in court.
taxpayer
Well, the
dollars
House
for
We're
any
moving
such
on, okay?
purpose.
Nancy?
The Tappan Zee Bridge project is moving quickly.
Mhm.
There is now an application for a $2.9 billion federal loan to help fund the project.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you both could talk about if the project is headed in the right direction, if that federal TIFIA loan is appropriate, and what you think about the federal government's role in infrastructure development beyond possibly a phase 2, which would be public transit. Mr. Maloney.
Well, thank you. I've spent a good deal of my career working on infrastructure policy. I think it's very, very important. When I was in state government, I created the Public-Private Partnership Commission to speed billions of dollars in new new projects forward, using private dollars alongside public dollars, public-private partnerships, including the Tappan Zee Bridge. And I applaud the governor for the design-build legislation. I applaud the governor for getting a plan moving forward. I worked on those issues in state government. The Congresswoman hasn't brought back a single dollar for the Tappan Zee Bridge. And the TIFIA program is a program that provides funding for these projects, and we should expand it because it's working. I'd like to see it expanded to water and environmental projects and other types of projects. But here's the point. The point is that we need to develop new ways of funding infrastructure projects. That's why I created the Public-Private Partnership Commission. And the best thing we could do is get away from the gas tax model. One of the ways to lower our gas prices right now would be to stop trying to use the gas tax to fund infrastructure. The Tea Party Congress has failed year after year to fund a real transportation bill. They passed this little $200 billion bill when we need a $600 billion bill. That's what everybody agrees is necessary. And the longer we kick this can down the road, because the Tea Party Congress won't do anything about it, the worse the situation is going to get, the worse our bridges and roads are going to get.
Okay, let's hear from the Congressman.
First of all, I'm one of the leaders in endeavoring to secure TIFIA funding for the Tappan Zee Bridge, and I was privileged to be the first member of the New York congressional delegation who met with Transportation Commissioner McDonald to way back early in 2011 to work on the federal cooperation to get the Tappan Zee Bridge project going from the federal level. So I'm proud to be a supporter because it is a very important interstate artery, and there is a federal role there, and I think that's a valuable thing to do. I also support mass transit, and I'd love to see it incorporated into the design of the Tappan Zee Bridge. It probably will be an option that will be something for later. That depends on how the governor and the state working with our local authorities make their final decision. But in the meantime, as a supporter of mass transit, I've also introduced a Commuter Savings Act bill to help commuters have parity in their tax credits, equality in their tax credits with people who drive to work, because I believe in the value of mass transit. I took mass transit for 2 years myself, just about. Still do take it, but not as a regular commuter anymore. And I think it's important that we give those folks a break. So I've introduced that
Can I say a
bill.
word about the commuter tax bill? I mean, the fact of the matter is, Congresswoman, that folks need to know what this is about. This is real important. If you take the train to the city to go to work every day, it used to be that you could pay those expenses with pre-tax dollars. You got a little tax break. It could be hundreds of dollars a year. That was great. That tax break expired this June, and Senator Schumer worked tirelessly in the Senate to get it extended in the Senate. But in the Tea Party Congress, it died. And every area person except Nan Hayworth worked for that. Congressman Grimm and Turner and King, all Republicans, fought like heck to get that extended, but it died a Tea Party death in the House of Representatives. And then the day after it expired, the Congresswoman put in the most cynical bill I've ever seen to say that she was fighting for it. Well, the Daily News said in a lead editorial, Congresswoman, that you threw your constituents under the bus. They called you out on it. And they said this was just to cover your tracks. So to come in here and to say that you've been fighting to help commuter costs is just unbelievable. Maybe the Daily News editorial can't be trusted either. But the fact of the matter is you weren't there for us when the commuter tax break expired.
If I may,
Please.
Herb, sustainability is a theme here. Balance, common sense, and sustainability. And this is something I've been talking about in a number of settings that we've been together in. The conference committee on the transportation bill decided not to extend. This was Democrats and Republicans decided not to extend the equality between the mass transit tax credit and the tax credit for drivers. Now, I was one of I certainly got a call from Senator Schumer when the bill was coming, the conference meeting, that combined effort was coming to its final phase. I got a call from Senator Schumer and went right away to talk with our House leadership about that tax credit and to be an advocate for its being continued. But as a practical matter of trying to honor as many aspects of a sustainable budget as possible in a time when we need big policies to change our economic climate, and we're working as hard as we can to try to pass those big policies, but until we do that, we're trying to make sure we work within the budgets we have. We couldn't get that credit extended. So instead, what I did in response to that, since I knew that credit wasn't going to be extended, I introduced a bill that actually has a responsible budget offset to make it appealing to all the folks who will be working on these issues as we go forward. The leadership of the House and the Senate. Senator Schumer's bill did not have that balance. My bill does. We have a balance so that we can offer that credit to commuters and also reassure folks who are concerned about the budgets that we're balancing that piece of the budget. And this is an approach that combines the approach of both parties responsibly. So that's why I have a different bill, and I have one that is likely to pass in the extenders at the end of the year.
We heard both of you. Appreciate that. I know that no one wants to talk about gun control. I mean, I thought that the Governor Romney and President Obama would crawl under the stage when someone asked the question the other day. But we've had the Arizona shooting and the Colorado shooting. We've had the Sikh temple shooting, and we have shootings in the city and in these suburbs all the time. What should government's role be in with respect to gun control? And Congressman, I have to ask you about how the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act, you voted for that. I want to see how does that help advance our safety and our security. This is a measure that requires states to honor other states carrying laws. Obviously, New York has one of the toughest gun laws. Does that make us safer?
Well, it's analogous to honoring driver's licenses, Herb. So when we have a Constitution that enshrines our right to, the Second Amendment is meant to enable us as citizens. Of course, we understand the circumstances at the birth of the United States from its colonial roots. This was to defend us against tyranny, and it's an important and fundamental right. Responsible ownership of firearms is an important right that cannot be infringed upon. But of course, the definition of responsible is something that has resulted in certain restrictions, appropriate ones, on who can own guns. And obviously, we know that some of that has to do with felony convictions. There are other criteria. These laws need to be, and this is universally agreed upon, these laws need to be appropriately enforced. Responsible gun owners are not the people who commit crimes, sadly, and very regrettably, and it is a condition of human life. There will unfortunately, I pray that it's not so, but we have to anticipate that there will always be people who want to hurt others. We want to do all we can to minimize, if we eliminate the circumstances that result in people's trying to harm others by whatever means, through illegally obtained weapons, through incendiary devices. We've certainly, with the Aurora shooter had, as we know, his apartment was rigged up with all kinds of explosives. These are terrible things. This is a criminal mind at work. Obviously, this is a madman at work. So we do need far better means of trying to neutralize those threats within our community. It's not an easy issue, but to restrict Second Amendment rights is not something that constitutionally we can do, and we have to respect that.
Well, I think this is important that folks know what we're talking about, Herb. I mean, thank you for raising this bill. The National Right to Carry Law is one of the most extreme bills. It's the dream bill of the NRA, and the idea is that if any state in the country, it's not a driver's license, with all due respect, Congresswoman, if any state in the country passes a law that says you can carry a concealed weapon, no matter how lax that law is, history of mental illness, domestic violence, whatever it is, which would prevent you from carrying that gun under our laws here in New York, Congresswoman Hayworth said, that's okay with me. And this was the dream bill of the NRA and the gun lobby. And Congresswoman Hayworth is the largest recipient of NRA money of any member of Congress from New York. She gets more money from the NRA than anybody else. So no wonder that she's doing their bidding in Washington. What we need to do is we need to have someone in Washington who's honoring your voice and your values, who sees these things through a common sense lens. This is not about respecting other states' driver's licenses. These are about deadly weapons that kill. And in the Clinton administration, we had passed the assault weapons ban, and we had historic decreases in crime during the 90s. That's the common sense approach we need. And unfortunately, Congresswoman Hayworth and the Tea Party have followed an extreme NRA-led approach, which includes this terrible bill, which many Republicans, even in New York, voted against.
We are running out of time, but wanted to talk about immigration for a moment. There's been scant legislative movement on the issue, and it's an issue in election after election after election. Nothing happens out of Washington. It's opened the door to some freelancing by the states, sometimes by constitutionally flawed means. Federal courts can be jammed with these cases for some time. What kind of immigration reform would you support, and also speak to the DREAM Act?
Sure.
Congressman.
Well, we can't have a meaningful approach to immigration unless we actually have secure borders, which we don't. So if our borders are porous, whether our air or by sea or certainly our land borders, then we don't have a realistic basis for enforcing immigration laws. We have to have a means of accommodating the need for labor in the United States. In our family farms in Orange County in particular, there's a significant need for seasonal labor. The policies that we have in place now that I've certainly tried to be our advocate for our farmers in rationalizing those policies. We have a lot to do on that, and we need the cooperation of both houses of Congress and the President. We don't have the right kind of laws to accommodate seasonal labor, to accommodate the kind of talent mix that some of our economic enterprises need. So those need to be adjusted as well for practical considerations, and we have to have a pathway for paying the penalty for having violated our laws in entering this country, because it is only fair to those who have respected our laws in taking a path to citizenship. So we have to have a means of making sure that that people who remain here who have not committed criminal acts should be cause for deportation. But there are millions of people who have not committed criminal acts who are here in the United States illegally, who need to be able to become tax-paying citizens. So we need to have
be clear, so you're saying you support a pathway to citizenship?
With an appropriate acknowledgement that price needs to be paid for not having contributed to the obligations of citizenship in the antecedent time, in the years before people came here, the years before people were offered the opportunity to become citizens, and then they need to take their place in the queue behind folks who are taking the legal route and respecting our laws. And I have great sympathy for children who were brought here before they had an opportunity to participate in that decision. And I think that certainly in terms of military service to our country, that should be one way in which we can offer full citizenship. And there are certainly other aspects of the DREAM Act that I think we can work productively on across the aisle. And I think this is one of those examples where we really do need, it's just about every example you can think of, we do need to have an approach that takes into account all the points of view.
Well, again, unfortunately, this used to be a bipartisan issue. Just a few years ago, John McCain and President George Bush supported comprehensive immigration reform, but that's not good enough for the Tea Party. And I think what you just heard the Tea Party Congresswoman say is that she doesn't support the DREAM Act. And I hope people know what that is. It means if your parents brought you here when you were 5 years old, 3 years old, and you grew up in the United States to undocumented parents, and you went to school, and you got a job, and you served in the military, and you played by the rules, and you're here working and paying taxes, that you shouldn't be thrown out of the country because you didn't do anything wrong, because you were a little kid, and you've been doing everything right since. That's not good enough for the Tea Party Congress. So in area after area, we see things that used to be bipartisan now become gridlocked. And the problem is that the Tea Party Congress and Congresswoman Hayworth won't, in this area and many others, do the common sense things we need to get everybody participating in the economy, to get every talented person we need working here, paying taxes, and out of the shadows. That makes us safer. It makes us a better country. And it's in the best traditions of American immigration.
I have one final question, and this is from a reader, Sam Sussman. He writes, what can we do about the corrosive influence of big money in our politics? Isn't it obvious that donors often have more influence than voters who can't be persuaded anyway without the big bucks necessary for advertisements? And how can we stop this undemocratic trend? We'll start with you, Mr. Miller.
Well, thank you. This really went into hyperdrive with the Citizens United decision, which is the worst Supreme Court decision in a long, long time. And Citizens United said that corporations are people. The corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money, and we don't even have to tell you who they're spending it on or what they're doing. This is the worst thing that's happened to our politics in a long time. There is so much money in politics, it's killing us. It's terrible. It's getting in the way of middle-class people being able to have a voice in government. It means only the most powerful special interests get heard and write the laws. And I'm sorry to say that my Tea Party opponent supports the Citizens United decision. She thinks it's great that corporations can just flood our politics with unlimited sorts of money. And it's little wonder, because she benefits so much from it. Right now, the Koch brothers and their extreme allies and the folks who want to keep fracking in the Hudson Valley and who keep Indian Point going forever, those industries are pumping money into support for Congresswoman Hayworth because she votes their way in Washington. I'm going to vote your way, and I'm proud that overwhelming majority of my contributions are from individuals. And those that are from groups are from folks that represent working and middle class people for the most part. That's the difference in this election. I would repeal Citizens United with a constitutional amendment, and I would force disclosure of all the amounts going into campaigns, and I would love to see citizen-funded campaigns so that your voice will be heard.
Congresswoman?
I was open in my support of the Supreme Court's decision regarding the constitutionality of Citizens United. I think it's regrettable that millions of dollars flow into politics. I'd rather see them go toward cures for disease, or toward education, or toward the arts. And the best way to assure that dollars don't flow disproportionately into politics, and certainly Mr. Maloney is the beneficiary of millions of dollars of outside money coming in, especially from Mr. Soros in particular, who seems to resent having an assertive Republican woman with a fairly independent frame of mind represent his, I guess, largest state in Bedford. But in any case, we need to make the federal government take less from us, involve itself less in what should be our own decisions to make. And the examples are all around us of how the federal government tries to regulate every aspect of our economy, every aspect of business in ways that make some folks want to control that process. I am an independent voice. If people support me, it is because I have a certain philosophy that they may also share. There's no question about it. But my support is transparent. Everybody can see, for the record. That's why Sean
no
can quote all
one's
these things.
support these days is transparent. But what about the
Well,
what about
but my
what about-
support,
Well, you don't
certainly
support
all of
disclosure,
my
Congresswoman.
all of my contributors are transparent,
But you don't support
as are the
disclosure under
organizations,
Citizens United, under
as
corporate
are,
You don't support that.
Citizens United was meant to even the playing field between among entities, including unions who don't have to disclose these things because
Okay.
they take,
Level the playing field.
most, SEIU, AFS, CME, ASME, all take contributions from their members as a mandatory issue and utilize them for political activity. They support
I don't want to get
you.
inside, but just to be clear, that, I mean, you support, you do not support a constitutional amendment to address the Citizens United.
It's a free speech issue, Herb, and we have to respect. Our Constitution has amendments that are meant to protect fundamental rights. Those rights have to be used responsibly, there's no question, but our Constitution respects us to do that, and what I always urge everybody to do is evaluate evidence with an open mind, and be sure to get their news and their information from a variety of sources. And certainly, if you see an ad on television, think hard about whether or not it makes sense with what you're actually finding out when you look at sources of more objective information.
Well, it's pretty simple. If you think there's too much money in politics, I'm your guy. If you think there's not enough money, or corporations should be able to spend whatever they want and not disclose it because you do not support that, Congresswoman, then, by all means, the Tea Party and Congresswoman Hayworth, they're your cup of tea. The fact of the matter is, Citizens United was decided incorrectly. There's 100 years of jurisprudence about how corporations are not people, and I don't believe corporations are people. If you think corporations are the same as a living, breathing person who needs the Medicare that you're going to cap and take away, who needs the Planned Parenthood services that you're going to defund and take away, and that corporations with all their resources, billions of dollars, should come flooding into our politics, wow, I just don't understand what kind of world we're going to have if ordinary people and your voices get drowned out by these huge corporate special interests. And that's what's killing our politics. That's why the Tea Party Congress is broken. We need to fix it.
Sean, you're the Herb. Do I get
Sure. 1 minute.
Sean, you're the ultimate example of someone who has faked an interest in a place in order to have personal gain. You've never lived in the Hudson Valley. You've never
So
worked in the Hudson
that's
Valley.
a
You
personal
do not
attack in
live in the
response to
Hudson
a
Valley. No,
constitutional
it is a
position.
matter
Is that
of
what that is?
facts. Sean, you live in Manhattan. You've never lived
I
in the
don't
Hudson
live in
Valley.
Manhattan. That's
You
a
pretend,
lie.
well,
It's a lie, Congresswoman.
we will,
It's a
we will,
bald-faced lie.
it is by you. You have
No, it's
never,
not.
you have chosen the
With
Hudson
respect.
Valley, I'm speaking respectfully, you've chosen the Hudson Valley as a convenient venue to advance your own political career, Sean, and this is something that is a fundamental deception and a fundamental disrespect to the people in the Hudson Valley. I represent all of the constituents who desperately need to have a government that, unlike what you support, Sean, your plan would increase people's taxes, increase people's burdens, increase the regulatory red tape that is choking our small businesses, increase our energy prices at a time when we actually need all of those burdens to be lifted so that we can actually grow the economy throughout the Hudson Valley, not in specific projects that you may choose.
I have to give him an
I'm sorry,
opportunity to
Herb, of
respond
course.
to the personal
Yeah,
attack.
look,
Go ahead.
I mean, this is, wow. I mean, we were having a conversation about unlimited corporate money in politics, and you saw what happened just now. When you challenge the Tea Party and you ask them to defend their record, they attack you. Well, here's the facts, folks. I live in Cold Spring. That's where I live. I've lived for 16 years in the Hudson Valley region in Sullivan County in Jeffersonville. My partner built a business in Sullivan and Orange County, including building modular homes in Port Jervis, including real estate brokerage business all over the region. That's for 16 years. We have long-standing ties to the region. It's a redistricting year, and the lines move around. And when I started this race, we didn't even know what the districts would be, and Congressman Hinchy's district was eliminated. Here's the point. The question was about why there's too much money killing our politics. The questions are about not a tax on me, but a tax on your Medicare, a tax on Planned Parenthood. That's what they're trying to hide behind these angry personal attacks. That's just wrong. We should have, the voters of this district, Congresswoman, went to the polls and they selected me in a democratic process to have this debate with you. And we owe them that debate. So
And
let's
we've had
have
it.
And this debate ends
And
now.
we've had
So
it.
we appreciate your time. Thank
And
you.
I'm proud to continue
very
having
much.
it.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
I'm going to let anyone escape who needs to escape, but there's one bit of help.